the economy's stupid. And the President Biden, says he's not getting enough credit for low unemployment and job growth. Why? Well, because people don't feel things are any better. They feel inflation. Gas prices are up 20 cents in just 2 weeks, and those numbers are going to keep going up along with the price of oil. $4.62 today is the average for a gallon of gas. There's talk of it being $6 by summer. Inflation is hitting the American public so hard, 1 in 4 people are delaying their retirement. And it's not only inflation. Stock markets pulled back significantly as well. Another reason people are delaying their retirement. Politico's playbook, which is the inside baseball of inside baseball in Washington, though, says the White House has a different plan to tell them, the American people, that they're not feeling what they're feeling. They're rolling out, quote, a new month-long economic campaign today to try, and this is a quote from the White House, to communicate our accomplishments to date on the economy. That's a White House official. They want to run on strength. All week, you are going to see members of the administration coming out talking about how great things are. They say they want to convince skeptical voters that despite their current misgivings, the economy is actually doing quite well. Forget what you paid for gas. They're going to calm fears about inflation and reassure Americans that major economic players, that President Biden has a plan. And they're going to try and keep the GOP from hanging inflation around the president's neck. Day one of that was today. Here's the president's economic advisor.
We can take on inflation from a position of relative economic strength. That is true if we look in the global context. Few countries are better positioned than the United States.
From a position of strength, Andrew Roberts counted he used the word strength 15 times in that interview and in that briefing. NewsNation's political editor Chris Stirewalk with us now. Chris, 40% job approval rating. Is the White House in a position of strength on anything?
Well, I mean, look, the problem that presidents always have is that when things are good, they want a lot of credit for the good things that are happening, even when they don't deserve it. But that means the other side is that when things are bad, that you have to take credit for that. It's like I say about compliments for my children. If I accept the compliments as their father, that means I also am responsible for the bad things that they do. So I say no. But every president wants to believe that he is incredibly powerful and can do all of these things, or just give a speech and change people's attitudes, or send out a bunch of flacks in your staff to go say stuff, and then it will change things, and it won't. But you got to do something. I mean, you know, as the old cartoon said, the end is near. Look busy.
Look busy. Part of that, though, is whatever your message that you're looking busy doing, right? And there's a decidedly different message from this White House in terms of how they're projecting President Biden and what he's talking about versus, say, Bill Clinton a la 1992 about the economy. Take a listen to him from the debate in 92.
I see people in my state, middle-class people, their taxes have gone up in Washington and their services have gone down. In my state, when people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names. When a factory closes, I know the people who ran it. When the businesses go bankrupt, I know them.
Why not economic town halls where the president can show that he feels Americans' pain?
I mean, number one, I'm sure Joe Biden would, like Bill Clinton, love to be running against an incumbent right now. And he would definitely talk about those feelings that he had. But, you know, Joe Biden's not very good on his feet. He is not good in situations where there's interplay with an audience. He's just not good. You can't have him out there too much. He's quite elderly, and he is prone to saying things that are totally devastating to his narrative. This isn't the kind of stuff you were talking about with he stakes out a policy position, then his team undermines it. It's just he's very uncertain. He looks like, as I said one time, a dog trying to walk across a freshly waxed linoleum floor. It's not pretty, and you're not sure he's going to make it all the way. So with Biden, they have a very limited set of options of what they can do with him, because he was never Bill Clinton, and he's never going to be Bill Clinton.
Certainly the fastball has slowed down for whatever it was, and prone to some more wild pitches. Hear the president talking about the types of weapons he finds most dangerous. To your point, Chris, take a listen.
The idea of these high-caliber weapons. There's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting.
He was talking about 9mm, which is one of the most popular types of weapons people have for protection in every sense, whether it be a handgun or a rifle. Does he risk losing the initiative on gun control if he continues talking sort of about things in this very imprecise way?
But he has no initiative on gun control. There is no, Chuck Schumer is saying basically, I'm going to let you work on a bipartisan proposal for a while before I run a bill that will please Democrats, force some swing state Republicans into difficult votes, and do the same thing that Washington does every time. Nobody I know in Washington thinks that this is going to result in any sort of meaningful changes to gun laws in America or any meaningful changes to any of this stuff whatsoever. Yep. Biden is in a position where he needs to look concerned. He's got to stay busy. It's funny watching him there talking to the reporters. We remember we used to call it with Donald Trump chopper talk, that he would whiz by the reporters as he went by. And he would manage to talk for 20 or 30 minutes and say nothing, right? He could talk forever without any meaningful content ever coming forth. Biden, on the other hand, really, you can see it's a real struggle for him to get from here to there. And it's why it's not a good setting for him.
Does anything matter for all that we have discussed if the economic numbers, particularly inflation, stay this bad?
The average loss of seats for a president's party in the president's first midterm since Ronald Reagan is 28 seats. That's a lot of seats. You're going to lose a bunch of seats probably when you're the incumbent president, no matter what. When the economy is down, that's going to make it worse. We say Biden's at 40%. That's about where Trump is. There's a lot of people who think that that's about where partisans are going to allow the numbers to be. So the reality for no Democrat I know thinks they're going to hold on to the House. The question for them is, how bad is it going to be? Because it could be as bad as 45 or 50 seats, or it could be as minimal as 15 or 20 seats. That would make a big difference for the second half of Joe Biden's term.
Yeah, and still, you still have to deal with the realities of the economic numbers either way. Chris Stirewalk, good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.